Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and I'm here today to cover the strength of Yuji Itadori. But I don't just want to say how strong Yuji Itadori is right now. I want to take us on a journey of Yuji's strength, of analyzing him from the start of Jujutsu Kaisen all the way up until now to see how strong Yuji is in the current day. However, I'm not going to be covering some events in the manga in particular because they haven't actually fully happened yet, but with Yuji both having finished his epic battle against Chozo and about to get a fight in the manga, I think that now is the perfect time to reanalyze how strong Yuji Itadori is. However, before we even get into this video, be sure to like and subscribe if you like anime content like this, and let's get straight into how strong Yuji Itadori is. Yuji is one of the earliest characters introduced to us in Jujutsu Kaisen, but well, he is the main protagonist after all. However, when he is first introduced, we are immediately made aware that this kid is not a normal kid. From breaking world records to denting steel by throwing a ball, and every sports club trying to get him to be an athlete, we are immediately made aware this kid is probably at least physically stronger than the peak of humanity without heavenly restriction, or at least able to be on the level of most peak athletes. This is supported even further when Megumi immediately compared Yuji to Maki and questioning if Yuji actually had a heavenly restriction just based on this alone, and him immediately surpassing a track record in his running speed. Like, this is kinda nuts. But we are truly made aware of Yuji's amazing strength when we see Yuji literally leap several stories, breaking a window in the process in order to save his friend. Yeah, remember when I said he was on the level of peak athletes? That was a lie. He is far above that, and I think this is like the main showing of Yuji is massively above just normal human level by this point. This also shows off another ability that Yuji has, which is his ability to see cursed spirits. The reason I'm addressing this is because in order to become a Jujutsu sorcerer, the bare minimum is the requirement is the ability to see curses, which means he did not need Sukuna to become a Jujutsu sorcerer, which is something I see often get confused with for Yuji, even though Sukuna was the one who did awaken Yuji's cursed energy as a result. Speaking of, Yuji devoured a Sukuna finger in order to save one of his friends' lives, because he wasn't strong enough to exorcise the cursed spirit, but immediately after consuming the finger, despite not even having control of his cursed energy, he is strong enough to control Sukuna's soul and suppress Sukuna's soul completely. And despite not even having control of his cursed energy, he is strong enough to suppress Sukuna's soul completely on his own, as well as control how long Sukuna can be out for in a normal circumstance. This is confirmed even more by Gojo later on, where after Yuji is knocked out and Gojo gives the whole rundown on how Yuji is going to die with all the fingers, takes Sukuna down with him, he feeds Yuji another finger, and Sukuna doesn't take control, which shows Gojo that Yuji is a vessel that comes once every 1,000 years, able to control and suppress Sukuna's soul. But later on, though, on an intro mission, both Yuji and Nobara battle against the Repugnite curse, which Yuji shows off several skills, such as great knife skills to take out a curse, and the ability to break a concrete wall with his bare hands. Yuji in his early introduction already shows amazing levels of strength that I think would put him around the grade 2 levels of strength in his introduction. Now, the reason I say he's around the grade 2 levels is thanks to the Cursed Spirit Guide. We know grade 2 curses are able to be beat with a shotgun, but just barely. And considering Yuji's strength and ability to break through concrete walls and jump buildings, I think putting him in the grade 2 level is fitting for him, at least in his introduction, but he gets much stronger when he starts to control cursed energy more around the detention center. Now, the real first test for Yuji comes around the time of the detention center arc, where he is sent to the detention center in order to help exorcise a cursed spirit. However, this cursed spirit was way too strong for the group to actually handle it. They had to fight, which this cursed spirit was a finger bearer, which Yuji decided to stay behind in order to hold off so Megumi could run and get backup so Yuji could hold up and hold off against the finger bearer cursed spirit. And well, to put it lightly, Yuji got destroyed by this thing, with it being able to take off Yuji's hand, and despite Yuji putting every bit of curse energy he had into a punch, it wasn't even enough to affect the finger bearer that much. The finger bearer was on an absolutely insanely different level, with the finger bearer being a special grade cursed spirit, which a special grade cursed spirit is already an insane level difference from the grade 2 level which I put Yuji at. where special grades are noted to only be taken out and like only have like a chance against them with carpeting explosives such as a cluster bomb might work on these things, and they're already absolutely insane in comparison to Yuji, who I think is above semi-grade 2 level curses, but not by that much, and not into the semi-grade 1 territory of cursed spirits yet. However, this is what I like to call the wake-up call for Yuji, where after Yuji gives control to Sukuna and Sukuna literally almost kills Megumi until Yuji takes back control, Yuji views this as a wake-up call. In order for him to get stronger and make sure Sukuna never gets the chance to take control over him again, so Yuji never needs to rely on Sukuna ever again. However, before I even do get into Yuji's training arc and what happens next, I do want to get into Yuji versus Sukuna inside of the innate domain, where Yuji pulls off something really impressive that I don't think is talked about enough, where Yuji is actually able to outplay Sukuna in terms of hand-to-hand skill, with the only reason Sukuna was able to win was because he literally just sped blitz behind Yuji and was kicking him off the bone, and then Sukuna took him out with a cleave and dismantle, which is like impressive, but it's just, it shows Yuji's actual skill and combat skill is on a Sukuna-like level, at least in terms of hand-to-hand. It's just he doesn't have the stats to back up that skill. Anyways, now we're going to get into Yuji actually starting to learn cursed energy control, where after Yuji is revived after making a deal with Sukuna, Yuji gets training from Gojo in order to manipulate his cursed energy, via pouring his cursed energy into a puppet that was made by Principal Yaga, in order to make sure that his fluctuation of cursed energy wouldn't change no matter what his emotional state is currently, by having Yuji watch movies while pouring his own cursed energy into the puppet in the process. This training allowed Yuji to make sure he could constantly control his cursed energy. Whether he was being talked to, whether he was drinking something, whether he was snuck up on, he was able to keep his cursed energy under control, no matter what his emotional state was, or at least almost no matter what his emotional state was, which I'll get back into in a little bit. However, Yuji was able to succeed at this training, and he did it incredibly fast, only taking a few hours until he was able to pull this training off. Which this also immediately got Gojo to comment on the fact that Yuji was an incredibly quick learner, which Gojo was already impressed by Yuji's potential, saying that Yuji was one of the few people who had the potential to reach his level someday, on the same level of people like Yuta Akotsu and Hikari Kinji. As right after they were done, Gojo basically picked Yuji up and brought him towards Jogo, telling Yuji that Jogo should be his new goalpost for how strong he should be, with Yuji immediately commenting that Jogo was stronger than anything he had ever seen before. However, I'm not going to focus on that for too long because that doesn't really help Yuji's scaling, just Yuji has a new goalpost in his mind. As right after this, he is sent towards Nanami Kento, the ideal grade 1 and poster boy of grade 1 sorcery, in order to learn more, to give his assistance on a mission, and to get stronger. The mission immediately starts out with Nanami noticing how Yuji controls his cursed energy, and one of his techniques that is a non-standard method of controlling cursed energy, which is known as the Divergent Fist, where after Yuji lands a punch on someone, he's able to keep that cursed energy on a person and it sticks to them, resulting in a second impact landing. Of course, Yuji's not actually in control of it yet, however, he is still able to use the Divergent Fist nonetheless, which is something that immediately catches Nanami's eyes and makes Nanami believe that Yuji has incredible amounts of potential, to the point where he understands why Gojo wanted him to stay alive, because it's effectively a double hit. Furthermore, Yuji also immediately takes out a transfigured human with this power, showing his above average levels of physical strength and his potential even more, despite only being a Jujutsu sorcerer for only a few months by this point. Furthermore, he does continue this arc and he eventually fights against Junpei after Junpei has awakened, which while Junpei doesn't really give Yuji any feats, it does give Yuji a new Hax resistance, which is a poison resistance thanks to being Sukuna's vessel, and he is able to defeat Junpei and hold him still, but then Mahito transfigures him, turning him into Barney. As it's then, Mahito and Yuji begin their battle. Mahito is a special grade curse spirit and one of the disaster curses, someone who should be beyond the levels of a finger bearer by this point. However, Yuji is immediately already able to show how much of a distance he's gone, especially with this new rage amp, because through this rage amp he is able to push Mahito forward, he's able to hit Mahito and do quite a bit of damage to Mahito, albeit this is because he is able to actually target Mahito's soul, and he is able to endure through all of the attacks Mahito delivers to him, already showing the level of distance that Yuji has gained in the process and his new levels of strength. Furthermore, he's also able to fight alongside Nanami in comboing Mahito. Now, I don't think you need to be on par with someone in order to combo them directly and be at the same speed. However, I do think Yuji is showing some level of relativity to Nanami, even if it is low-end relativity. Furthermore, Yuji is also able to actually hurt Mahito, who Nanami is not able to hurt Mahito at this point. Oh, and Yuji does have one more incredibly strong power, which is the ability to be immune to idol transfiguration due to the presence of Sukuna inside of him, thus kicking Mahito out and not giving him the ability to transfigure Yuji's soul due to Yuji and Sukuna's soul being directly connected, and Sukuna doesn't like it when people touch his soul. Now, with all of the feats that have happened from Yuji's fight against Mahito and the rage amp that came after, I believe Yuji in this arc, at the end of this arc, is able to take on grade 1 level curses. In other words, he's semi-grade 1 level, where even a tank might be useless against these levels of curses. The reason that I believe that he is of this level is because of his ability to injure Mahito and push Mahito back with his insane levels of physical strength and the ability of the Divergent Fist. However, I don't think Yuji has entered into the grade 1 territory quite yet, mainly because of the fact this was a baby Mahito, who Mahito was still getting used to his abilities and was caught off guard by the fact that Yuji could actually hurt him now. So I don't think that Mahito was anywhere near on guard and prepared for that, which is why I don't think he is in the grade 1 territory for sorcerers quite yet. However, I think he is getting close, and in the next arc, he enters into the grade 1 territory and then goes deep into the grade 1 territory. In the Goodwill arc, Yuji gets a lot of feats and gets a lot stronger. However, at the start of the arc, he also gets a really interesting statement that upscales Yuji from the past in the detention center, where Megumi says, "I don't know what he's been doing since he's been dead, but if we were to all fight Yuji without cursed energy, Yuji would still beat us," which is both talking about him as well as Kyoto High, which is already incredibly impressive considering Maki basically doesn't have cursed energy, even though she has a little bit, but she basically doesn't have cursed energy powers. There is Panda, there is Todo, who Todo's incredibly physically strong and buff on his own, etc. All of these people would lose to Yuji without cursed energy powers, which is impressive because they all have much more combat experience than Yuji, but if they didn't have cursed energy powers and Yuji didn't have cursed energy powers, he would still beat them all. And that is Yuji in the detention center, let alone Yuji now, who has gotten even stronger, which his strength buff is immediately noticed when his first fight is literally him against the entirety of the Kyoto school at once, and then him against Todo. Where to start the fight off, he immediately lands a knee on Todo's face, and Todo immediately compliments him, saying pretty good speed after spitting out a bit of blood, immediately getting a compliment from Todo just off the bat from that first attack. Where it's then Todo immediately punches him, and where Yuji immediately comments if that grade 3 curse spirit didn't get in the way, Yuji's arms would be gone, which is impressive for Todo's physical strength. And then Todo begins to stomp on Yuji's face. I don't think Todo was actually hitting him as hard as he hit that punch. I just want to get that out the way because he bloodies Yuji's face, but he doesn't break it. Where immediately after, Yuji creates a spirit bond, creating his new brother's bond with Todo. After he says the type of girls he is into, and the both of them agree and become best friends with Todo, having an entire memory sequence happening in his head, because yes, this is Todo. And that is when Yuji just gets jumped immediately by having to jump and get away from several bullets firing at him at once, as well as an arrow from Kamo, both on the side, and then he immediately gets caught in Miwa's new Shadow-style Simple Domain Bado sword drawing. However, Yuji is just barely able to avoid it, even though Miwa was hesitating a little bit, and it does catch Miwa off guard they could, as all of them prepare to jump Yuji and try and kill him right in that moment. As it was then, Todo threatens for them all to go away so he can fight against Yuji one-on-one. And they all are forced to go away, as Todo now faces Yuji in a one-on-one matchup. Where now that Yuji is a lot more on guard and prepared for Todo's power, he's actually able to block hits from Todo and actually fight him relatively well in hand-to-hand, which shows the difference between on-guard and off-guard Yuji, because, yeah, normally Todo's hits would have gone straight through his arms. But now that he's on guard, he is prepared. As Todo begins to compliment him in his mind, he calls him incredibly tough, he calls Yuji incredibly smart with the battlefield, good ability to predict and use the battlefield to his advantage, and on top of all of that, he thinks that Yuji's raw power is incredible. Despite having a small stature, he's stronger than Todo is. And that even though Yuji doesn't have as much cursed energy, his strikes are effective, and it's hard to read his movements because he lacks a lot of cursed energy, which is a typical advantage that sorcerers have where they are able to read someone's movements based on cursed energy focus, but because of Yuji's low amount of cursed energy, it's much harder to read Yuji's movements in comparison to someone else. However, it's then Todo stops the fight in order to explain the Divergent Fist, how it holds him back, and as long as Yuji remains satisfied with just the Divergent Fist, he'll never be able to defeat Todo. And immediately after, Yuji begins to understand how to control his cursed energy, without Todo even needing to explain it to him, and only Todo just pointed out what Yuji did wrong, as Yuji began to grow while fighting against Todo, and he began to control his cursed energy to such a point, Todo says he's completely different from what he was a moment ago, and he just keeps growing and growing, and it's at this point that I truly believe Yuji enters into the territory of a grade 1 sorcerer. After all, he's now a completely different beast from what he was before, and before he was only around the semi-grade 1 levels, but now he's even stronger, so I think right now he's at the bottom levels of a grade 1. However, Yuji's growth against Todo is not completed yet, because while he got stronger, Todo explained to him that your Diversion Fist stems from the cursed energy flow left behind by your superhuman speed. That's quite the technique. I'd say your average Jujutsu sorcerer wouldn't know what's happening. The force behind your attacks is nothing to scoff at either, or it wouldn't be if I was your average sorcerer. It's useless against a special grade. And while Yuji did get stronger by this point, it wasn't enough. As Todo continued to explain, it's because of how your cursed energy is flowing. Even though Yuji wants to be able to make it so, his cursed energy hits exactly at the moment his strike hits the full strength. Where Todo explains the process of consciously controlling curse energy, how we don't think with our stomachs, but we think with our mind in order to express anger, how a sorcerer and people in general exist in this world with their entire body, mind, and soul, and it's so obvious that most people have taken it for granted. And it's through those words, Yuji was able to understand it and completely control his cursed energy, actually being able to fight against Todo in that moment, as the both of them begin to go all out in their duel in order to actually fight against each other. And it's then I think Yuji continues to grow and get stronger and stronger, with his first initial growth helping making him a different person from before, but now that Yuji truly understands how to control cursed energy and the conscious flow of cursed energy, he's even stronger than he was a moment ago before, showing Yuji's immense potential. And the next time we see them is in the battle against Hanami, where Hanami is already incredibly durable, and that's the main thing about Hanami that most people notice, where they're durable enough to tank a blood-slicing exorcism, one of Nue's lightning-based attacks, an attack from Maki, even though that the attack with the Playful Cloud did do some damage to it, and finally an attack from Totality. All of these barely doing any damage to Hanami though. And once the battle begins, Yuji immediately enters into a rage state after figuring out Hanami and Mahito are working together, with Yuji landing 3 kicks on Hanami, causing Hanami to comment on the fact that Yuji is more agile and fast than Maki was. However, his strength was disappointing. As it's then, Todo pulls him away and slaps him, after giving him a lecture, telling him that anger is not a good source all the time. While anger is good for most sorcerers, it doesn't have the same advantage all the time because it makes it harder to control your cursed energy because you're much more in the moment. For now, Yuji needs to put his anger away and focus on the battle itself, which Yuji immediately does, and the second after he finds that out and figures out how to, he immediately lands a Black Flash on Hanami. Where immediately after landing the Black Flash, Yuji gains a much grander understanding of his cursed energy, to the point where Todo compares it to cooking, where beforehand he was only cooking by throwing random ingredients in and just seeing what comes out, not being familiar with the pot at all. But now Yuji's aware of the pot, and now Yuji knows how to properly cook. Yuji knows how to fight, putting him on a completely different level of a chef in comparison to before, because Yuji is now aware of his cursed energy and how to make it flow properly in comparison to what he was doing before, where he only had some idea of it. Now he truly can get a feel for his cursed energy, being put on a completely different level to even what he was previously and getting much stronger as a result of this, with Hanami later on commenting on the fact that both Yuji and Todo's normal strikes, while not as powerful as the Black Flash, are actually capable of damaging Hanami. And it's then immediately after Hanami gets even stronger in the fight, due to them enjoying fighting and becoming more one with themselves, something Mahito tells us makes them stronger as cursed spirits. However, it's soon after Yuji ties out the record holder for consecutive Black Flash usages, being Nanami Kento, who Nanami was able to use it consecutively 4 times within the Night Parade of 1,000 Demons. And as a result of that, Yuji is able to land it 4 times consecutively against Hanami, and able to get even stronger as a result and do much more damage to Hanami with that Black Flash barrage. With Hanami straight up saying, "This is the first time I've been hurt so much," after Yuji did land the Black Flash barrage and Todo and Yuji's repeated combo attacks. However, the fight is interrupted by Gojo breaking down the barrier, right before Hanami could use his domain expansion, where Gojo immediately comments on the fact that Yuji has gotten way stronger. And this is where I'd like to take a little bit of a break to talk about how much stronger Yuji is now in comparison to what he was before. I think this Yuji right now would have been able to mid-diff, if not low-diff, the finger bearer from before. He by this point is definitely on the mid-end of the grade 1 section, being much stronger, being able to keep up with the likes of Todo now, and having increased his strength massively. One through fighting against Todo and getting more motivated to force his cursed energy to make it keep up with his physical strength, one through understanding his cursed energy and how to make it flow more properly, and then one after landing the Black Flash, let alone 4 more Black Flashes that came after from how much stronger Yuji got from this arc alone. The Yuji of now is able to make the Yuji in the past look like nothing, considering how much stronger Yuji has become. And it's only shown more and more in the next arc as well, where he's able to fight against Eso and Kechizu, and he's able to land another Black Flash alongside Nobara, 2 special grade Curse Wound paintings that are incredibly powerful in their own right, albeit not as powerful as the likes of Hanami, but they are still incredibly strong nonetheless, and Yuji ends off this entire arc being incredibly strong, after landing another Black Flash and getting much more powerful. Yuji is able to move so incredibly fast that both Nobara and the Blood Brother with the Wing King are able to both notice how fast Yuji is actually moving in comparison and be heavily impressed by that. However, there aren't too many feats for Yuji in this arc, mainly because I believe this was a catch Nobara and Megami up to Yuji arc, not a all 3 of them get stronger together arc. However, now I'd like to move on to Shibuya. Now, the Shibuya arc is the most recent arc the anime is in. I do just want to mention this, Yuji was trusted to be one of the 3 people to apprehend Mechamaru in case Mechamaru was the traitor, and yeah, like that's out the way, and that feat is now mentioned. I do want to actually get into Yuji's feats in Shibuya, because even with where the anime is at, Yuji has displayed a lot of feats that make him insanely impressive in my opinion for the Shibuya incident. The first battle we see with Yuji is him against the Grasshopper Curse, which immediately shows his ability to adapt in his immense strength and speed, because Yuji is battling in hand-to-hand against a creature with 4 arms, and he's not just outpacing him, he's the only one not getting hit. The Grasshopper Curse is the one who constantly gets hit by Yuji repeatedly, down to the point where the Grasshopper Curse cannot land a single hit on Yuji. And then he returns to Mei after beating the Grasshopper Curse and defeating it, and Mei immediately says Yuji's on the level of a grade 1 for defeating the Grasshopper Curse spirit, which immediately supports the entire idea that Yuji is grade 1 level by this point. Furthermore, Yuji also defeats several transfigured humans with relative ease, howbeit we don't know how strong they are, but they are still transfigured humans nonetheless, as Yuji and Megami team up in order to defeat the Inverse Sorcerer, and this is more just a feat for Megami than it is for Yuji in my opinion, because while Yuji does hop several stories and yeet him down into the ground and is able to survive this jump, at the same time, it's mainly just being used as a feat to show Megami can keep up with Yuji rather than the other way around, but it's still impressive nonetheless because it shows Yuji's ability to help work around someone as tricky as the Inverse Cursed Sorcerer. Oh, and also Ino makes an extremely interesting statement before we get into Yuji's next battle, where Ino says that Yuji's physical strength is so strong it matches Nanami, that Yuji's physical strength right now is equal to Nanami. And this is where I believe Yuji actually becomes a decent and grade 1 level sorcerer, with Nanami being called the pinnacle of grade 1 sorcerers, and Yuji after landing the 4 Black Flashes from before, as well as getting stronger and stronger. I think this Yuji right here is on par with Nanami Kento. And when Yuji fights against Choso, I believe this is the biggest battle he has ever been pushed in his life against. Now, Yuji does very good against Choso, even though he does lose inevitably in the fight. That's not to say Yuji does bad. With Yuji's physical strength alone, he makes Choso need to use Flowing Red Scale in order to actually be able to go even with him. Without that, Yuji's able to cause critical damage to Choso's body. Furthermore, he's also able to dodge the Piercing Blood Arrow, something noted to be an incredibly fast attack, especially by another character later into the series, which I'm not going to get into. But it is noted to be an incredibly fast attack, especially by Yuji, who usually has to barely dodge it at the last second, and that's his only way to dodge it. Furthermore, he's also capable of tanking several of his attacks, and the only reason Yuji lost is because he got incredibly damaged. However, through that fight, Yuji understands his role even better, and becomes better at creating cursed energy, able to turn all of his emotions into cursed energy. If Yuji went into that fight at full HP, he would have been much stronger after realizing this if Yuji didn't get hit. Unfortunately, Yuji had already suffered critical injuries and was knocked out and lost the fight as a result of that. Even with Sukuna being unimpressed, saying, how could you lose to someone like that? Now, this is where the video ends if you are an anime only. At this current point, after the Choso battle, Yuji is incredibly powerful. Yuji is around the level of a high-end grade 1, being on par with Nanami in terms of striking strength, and maybe even stronger thanks to learning how to control his curse energy and turn his negative emotions into curse energy even further. However, if you do want to continue with the rest of this video to see how strong Yuji is current day in the manga, then you can continue on. But to the rest of you, I hope you have a good day, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace out, I'll see you later. The next time we see Yuji is after Sukuna takes control over his body, and after the entire fight against Mahoraga where he wiped out a large portion of Shibuya through his malevolent shrine, putting Yuji in an absolutely terrible state of depression, but also granting Yuji a large amount of curse energy in the process due to the massive amount of negative emotions that he was going through. And as we have previously established, going through negative emotions make you stronger in Jujutsu Kaisen if you are a strong enough sorcerer, and I think Yuji was able to at least hone some of his negative emotions, even though by this point he was extremely broken, as the narrator had said, where Yuji tells himself he needs to fight, he needs to move, as he finds himself in a subway where Mahito kills Nanami directly in front of Yuji after Mahito says, "You got it from here," to Yuji, and the two begin their battle, where Yuji gets a lot of feats in his battle against Mahito, showing that this Yuji is on a completely different level, even in comparison to what he was at before. As the battle immediately starts out with Mahito almost splitting Yuji's skull if Mahito had put a little bit more hip into the attack, before Yuji and Mahito begin their hand-to-hand clash, as Mahito decides not to change his form, trying to trick Yuji in the process. However, Yuji shows even more of his hand-to-hand skill via going to the ground using the Manji kick in order to disappear completely from Mahito's line of sight and kick Mahito hard before launching him back with another kick, causing him to immediately cough up blood and do a lot of damage to him. This is also where Mahito and Yuji start to get to the entire conversation of "I am you," and Yuji is trying to deny the entire accusation that he and Mahito are the same. However, Yuji then resolves himself against Mahito by saying Nanami wouldn't lose his cool, prove to him that you are a Jujutsu sorcerer. And throughout this fight, Mahito does incredibly intelligent and tactic-based moves, such as using delayed transfigured humans and extending his arm rapidly. However, the time he extended his arm rapidly was a mistake, because Yuji was able to use that and almost pull Mahito towards an incredibly lethal state, something Mahito himself comments on that how that could have been scary. And by that point after, he decides he's no longer taking risky options against Yuji anymore, and that he's mainly going to stick to delayed transfigured humans instead. Where throughout the fight, Mahito begins to use more and more intelligent strategies, such as keeping a few humans alive to have them suddenly transfigure on the spot in order to break Yuji's will even further, as well as using random humans as bombs against Yuji to blind him as well, and use those moments to land hits on Yuji, yet Yuji is still able to take those hits and keep fighting and keep on trucking, showing his level of endurance and durability despite having his mental resolve broken more and more, especially considering the situation he literally just came from that Sukuna had put him in. However, upon seeing that Nobara was fighting alongside him, Yuji is able to up his resolve even further and rapidly bombard Mahito, taking advantage of the opening that Nobara put on him and making Mahito cough up a large amount of blood with each of these strikes, showing Yuji's incredible physical strength and that he's completely superior to Mahito in terms of pure raw hand-to-hand combat, and why Mahito had to be so cautious against a sorcerer like Yuji. However, the moment that Yuji's resolve truly shattered was when Mahito finished off Nobara. As the narrator said, losing to Choso, Sukuna's rampage, Kento Nanami's death, Yuji Itadori's resolve had reached its limit long ago, with Mahito immediately landing a black flash on Yuji after understanding his true self and who he truly was as a curse, and bombarding Yuji with physical attacks, making him cough up blood as he mocks Yuji with his words, breaking him down spiritually and mentally, leaving him on the ground about to try finishing him until Todo comes in to assist him. What's more impressive is, Yuji was able to survive this bombardment of attacks despite being in a terrible place emotionally. He was able to live live despite his will and resolve being broken long enough for Todo to come in and save him. However, Todo was able to help Yuji further solidify his resolve, making Yuji apologize for being about to run away and use his sin as an excuse, and immediately making Yuji land a black flash thanks to the level of concentration he was taking in that moment, returning back from the dead in order to fight alongside Todo despite all of the damage that he had taken up to this point, which shows Yuji's incredible mental resolve and ability to, when he resolves himself, land black flashes if the moment calls for it. And furthermore, we get an extremely interesting statement from Mahito, which if interpreted in a certain way, might actually make Yuji a lot more powerful than even we currently think, where he says, "The top-knot gorilla's soul is at full health, can I kill him with one touch in this state? I'd say Itadori's soul is at about 10%, and I'm at 40%. And the way that this could be used to interpret is basically by saying that Yuji is 10 times stronger than Todo at full HP. However, I don't fully believe in this interpretation myself. I believe Yuji is stronger than Todo right now at this point, in the current point in the fight. However, you could use that to interpret it that Yuji is 10 times stronger than Todo at full HP. I just don't think that's accurate. Like, I think Yuji's stronger, and it's made to show Yuji's on a different level than Todo, with Todo especially saying, "You've gotten stronger from this fight, haven't you, brother? And the one being left behind is me," which is when Todo immediately lands a black flash and catches up to Yuji. However, I did want to throw out this possible interpretation because I know I've seen it going around before, that Yuji might physically be 10 times stronger than Todo and like 4 times physically stronger than Mahito. I'll leave that up to you guys. It's then soon after Mahito activates his domain expansion, and the narrator says Yuji was even faster, already running towards Mahito to exercise him before the activation of Idle Transfiguration in comparison to Todo's simple domain, which means Yuji's defense was faster and his inherent reaction was faster than what Todo's was in order to defend against the domain. Where it's then immediately after Mahito lands a black flash on Todo before Yuji lands a black flash on Mahito in return, which results in the both of them being able to use even more of their potential due to using the black flash. However, it's immediately after Mahito reawakens and awakens into the instant spirit body of distorted killing in order to battle against Yuji, which amplifies both his durability and his offense by an amazing amount, to the point where Yuji gets slammed into the ground and it makes craters in the ground when Mahito does so, which is much more powerful in comparison to what was happening before, with Mahito also able to slash at the ground and makes large amounts of slashes with just his shoulder blades, fighting against Yuji in the process. The two of them repeatedly clashing blows, being able to fight with each other equally and do incredibly well against each other in terms of their physical blows. However, while Yuji and Mahito are around the same level in terms of striking strength, Mahito's durability massively exceeds that of Yuji, to the point where Yuji's attacks can't even reach him at this point, which is especially impressive considering Yuji is strong enough to be able to hurt Hanami with normal attacks back in Goodwill, let alone the Yuji right now, who by that point has landed a total of 7 black flashes, gotten several negative emotion based amps, and gotten several amounts of training, and is still not able to harm Mahito with his normal attacks. However, Mahito can be hurt with a black flash from Yuji, which leads to Yuji showing off that he can control the Divergent Fist, using it as a tactic against Mahito, which also allowed Todo to leave one final distraction against Mahito before Yuji was able to land a black flash on Mahito's weakened side and completely destroy his transformation, making Mahito unable to fight anymore. As it was then right after Yuji had accepted that he and Mahito were the same, which I do believe did make Yuji a bit more powerful. However, we wouldn't be able to see that power because of how exhausted Yuji was from this fight, as Mahito ran away and Kenjaku arrived to kill steal Yuji Itadori. Where in this battle, we get a few interesting feats from Kenjaku about Yuji, where he's actually impressed by how durable that Yuji's vessel is after using the Tentacle Curse Spirit on Yuji in the process. And this is especially impressive considering we know the fact Kenjaku can amplify his cursed spirits, as we find out in the battle against Yuki much later on. But Yuji was able to survive this nonetheless. Furthermore, Yuji is also able to break out from Urame's ice. However, Yuji does suspect that it is because they have something to do with Sukuna, and mainly because Sukuna was defending them, but it's also possible that Urame was choosing to lower the output specifically around Yuji due to not wanting Harumi the Vessel, which is implied later on in a later on fight, which I'll get to soon. However, that right there is the end of Shibuya, at least when it comes to feats for Yuji Itadori, and Yuji gets insanely powerful from this entire thing. from getting a massive negative emotion amp thanks to everything Sukuna did, from getting stronger thanks to his battle with Choso being and landing 3 separate black flashes. He's gained so much more power from this fight. Start of Shibuya Yuji and end of Shibuya Yuji are in completely different categories of power by this point. And if I were to put this Yuji anywhere, he would be a high-end grade 1 and piercing into maybe the special grade 1 territory. I don't think he is in the like special grade fighter level territory, but I do think he's getting into the special grade 1 level territory. After the battle in Shibuya, Yuji finds that he's healing at an extremely fast rate, even faster than usual. Of course, he's still injured despite being hit by black flashes, but he thinks he's good, and he believes that the healing is because of Sukuna, and he can tell that his strength is growing at the very least. And he believes he can no longer stay with everyone, however Choso decides to go with him nonetheless. After the battle, though, against a few cursed spirits, Choso immediately makes a mental thought about Yuji, where he says he'd already impressed me with his power when we fought. Since then, he's added finesse, fluid control of cursed energy along with unreal physical strength. He's now a demon god and he still isn't fully recovered, which is incredibly impressive and just shows how much growth Yuji got from his battle against Mahito, and supports even more that Yuji's on a completely different level to what he was at the start of Shibuya in comparison to now, with the comparison Choso brings in his battle against both Naoya and Yuta Akotsu. The fight immediately starts out with Naoya complimenting Yuji's durability and the fact that Yuji is able to semi-pick up on Naoya's movements, albeit not fully, just by commenting he is fast. However, it's then Yuta Akotsu arrives in order to begin the fight, and the battle immediately splits off to Yuta versus Yuji and Choso versus Naoya. We're going to be focusing on Yuta versus Yuji for this vid, where Yuta immediately tried to speed blitz Yuji, but it didn't work. Where Yuta says he expected to take Yuji out with the initial rush, but it didn't work, showing Yuji's speed already on display against base form Yuta. And Yuta tries to speed blitz him again, only for it not to work and Yuji to literally throw a car at him, and for Yuta to immediately compare Yuji to say he is like Maki, as Yuji then makes a statement that Yuta is the exact opposite of him, where Yuta has so much cursed energy it can make up for his incredibly physically weak body. However, Yuta just has so much flowing through him that it's near impossible to predict Yuta. However, Yuji is still able to fight him and make sure he doesn't get blitzed, even though he's not able to read his moves. Where the two fight again, and Yuji gets to show off even more of that knife skills that he showed off in the beginning of the series, but now he's showing it off against Yuta, where Yuta immediately kicks him, and Yuji makes a comment that even a mere kick from his leg is incredibly powerful thanks to the amount of curse energy that he has, but Yuji's able to break Yuta's katana. As Yuta then lands a sword slash across Yuji's gut, doing heavy amounts of damage as a result of that when he was off guard, and furthermore, he does still state that it was never going to be easy, as it was then Rika is able to hold him still, despite this being an injured Yuji nonetheless. However, Rika is able to hold Yuji still in order for Yuta Akotsu to stab him, but in the process heal Yuji while doing so, first killing Yuji and then bringing him back to life in order to satisfy the deals of the binding vow. However, there is something else that I think should be noted about this, which is the fact that Yuji was subconsciously holding back because there was a part of him that wasn't sure if he wanted to die yet or not. And while yes, Yuta was also holding back, it is not to be used to downplay Yuji, because Yuji was also holding back and a part of him wanted to die, so he couldn't fight at full potency either. As it's then they move in order to get Hikari, where Yuji is able to beat Panda in a play fight. They weren't actually properly fighting, but furthermore, when Hikari fights Yuji, Hikari is able to land several punches on Yuji while Yuji just forces himself to stand there and take it. This is base form Hikari, who's able to literally launch Yuji out from the room, which is already incredibly impressive considering how hard it is to launch Yuji. However, it's still Yuji who's able to live through these base form Hikari levels of punches. However, it is then we move on to the actual Culling Games and the fights that Yuji has within the Culling Game, where he immediately starts out with a 2v1 feat, fighting against someone with a helicopter head, the legendary, the ultimate helicopter man, and Barry Steak Fries from Jetpack Joyride's cousin, even though they're much less quality than he is, and fighting against both of them at once and beating them. This doesn't really give any scaling for Yuji because these guys don't really scale to anyone. However, I do think it's important to bring up nonetheless, and then he ends up fighting against Higuruma Hiromi. Higuruma is an immensely powerful sorcerer, one who immediately was able to awaken a domain upon awakening, and got a narrator statement that they were able to use curse energy and manipulate it so well by working backwards from their domain that they are on the level of a grade 1 sorcerer. However, the most important thing that I want to talk about is the fact when Yuji fights him without cursed energy, he is still able to do incredibly well and land hits on him that are hard nonetheless. So I think even without cursed energy, Yuji's around the level of a grade 1 now. Of course, he wasn't actually winning against Higuruma, but he was still doing incredibly well. Finally, he was able to dodge several United States soldiers' gunfire, which is also incredibly impressive considering levels of speed for this verse, but I don't want to talk about that much. However, let us move into the most important fight of them all for Yuji's scaling. Yuji versus Sukuna. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, okay, why is this the most important fight for scaling Yuji Itadori? This fight is literally just 2 chapters long. We don't get that much from the Eternal Flame. And that is where I ask, have you been reading the same manga that I've been? Because this is one of the biggest fights for Yuji Itadori's scaling. Where it immediately starts out with Sukuna punching Yuji in the gut, launching him through a building and knocking him out. This blow, Sukuna was expecting to kill Yuji, despite knowing how durable Yuji is up to this point, and this being an off-guard Yuji on top of that, because he's still dealing with the initial shock that Megumi, his body, has now been taken over by Sukuna. Despite knowing all of the durability he can take, all of the punches that Mahito landed that weren't able to put Yuji down, all of the blows that Kenjaku and Yuta landed that weren't able to put Yuji down, he believed this singular punch would be enough, but he is surprised that Yuji was still here and that Yuji was not just able to get up, but also Yuji got up with what looks like 0 damage, as Yuji immediately launched Sukuna back through several buildings just off of his pure physical strength alone. And before some of you guys say, oh, just Sukuna is arrogant, no. Sukuna is not arrogant, and this is especially proven when Yuji lost to Choso, and Sukuna is straight up surprised. Like, how could you lose to someone like that? Is something he says. So if anything, Sukuna might actually overestimate Yuji just a slight bit. And this is even more supported when Sukuna immediately says, what's going on? Where did this strength come from? And this implies Sukuna is actually surprised at how strong Yuji is, despite seeing what Yuji is capable of, supporting that this Yuji is on a completely different league to what he was at moments ago in the Culling Games, and maybe even stronger than the Black Flash he landed on Mahito all the way back then. Which means each of Yuji's punches that he's landing right now might be more powerful than the Black Flash that he used on Mahito's true form, where he then literally throws a slab of concrete at Sukuna and pushes him back even further in the process. And this is when we get one of the most impressive durability feats for Yuji, when Sukuna lands a normal cleave on Yuji, and then furthermore lands several waves of cleaves on Yuji only for them not to work in the process. Now the important part is not the fact Yuji tanked the wave cleaves and dismantles, because as you all know, Megumi was fighting back against Sukuna at that point and suppressed it. What's more important is Yuji tanking a single wave of cleave when Sukuna hit him with it, and Sukuna not being surprised by the fact Yuji was still alive. That means Sukuna believed Yuji could at least survive one cleave, and I don't believe that that cleave was being suppressed by Megumi at that point either, purely because of the fact we don't see Sukuna's hand twitch when we see that one, but it's with the mass wave of cleaves where we start to see the hands actually twitch, which is a sign that Megumi is rebelling against Sukuna. Furthermore, I think Sukuna would notice earlier if that was the point where his curse energy output was failing and not the mass wave of cleaves. At least that's my opinion considering how much massive control Sukuna has shown over his cursed energy, but I do believe that this cleave, the first one he landed on Yuji, was one that was not being suppressed by Megumi. I don't think it was Sukuna at full power as a note. I think Sukuna was still holding back nonetheless. However, Yuji was still able to survive it nonetheless. However, it is then the battle continues where both Yuji and Maki now battle against Sukuna. However, this should be noted, it is still an extremely injured Yuji because of how many cleaves he tanked and how the fact he is still shown to be bleeding by this point. And actually shown to be extremely exhausted, because Yuji immediately starts the chapter by saying huff huff. He is still exhausted. But Maki joins in the fight, and both Yuji and Maki fight against Sukuna together, where Yuji is able to keep up with Maki even when Maki says she is going to speed up, and Yuji keeps up with him in the process. And Maki is also able to do incredibly well against Sukuna. However, Yuji is just shown to be relative to Maki throughout the entire fight, albeit being the weaker of the two of them, but I do want it to be remembered that Yuji is still being shown to be relative to Maki nonetheless. And then he has a battle against Kusakabe, which is a training arc, but we don't really see the effects of it or what even happens in that battle. However, this is about it when it comes to Yuji's feats. Yuji is incredibly strong, able to, in my opinion, be on the same level as Maki when in this incredibly angry state, a state that I still believe Yuji has full access to due to how rage buffs work in Jujutsu Kaisen, which is just making much more cursed energy, and I don't think Yuji has lost that power at the very least. And it's also just implied by Sukuna that Yuji has awoken some other type of power that we do not know about yet. Furthermore, while I do think Yuji is relative to Maki in terms of hand-to-hand, it should also be remembered, Yuji could not use the Black Flash or Divergent Fist while he was fighting against Sukuna, due to him being too angry to use it in the process. After Yuji is calmed down, he should be much stronger because now we should be able to try and use things like the Divergent Fist and the Black Flash. Now he will no longer have his anger plaguing his vision, but he's going to get all of the power that he had just recently gotten. And this, in my opinion, puts Yuji at an incredibly insane power level at this current point. With him now being able to throw hands with the special grade levels of people like Maki, Hikari, and Yuta at this current point. However, I do believe Yuji would still lose to them because he's lacking things like domain counters. Yuji's strength should not be downplayed because he is able to now keep up with the special grade levels of fighters. The level Yuji is at right now in terms of durability, strength, and speed is absolutely insane. Just by keeping up with Maki, he is able to now reach speed levels even higher than Naoya could because Maki has surpassed Naoya in speed, and Yuji is able to keep up with Maki even when Maki was speeding up. Yuji has shown durability levels to be able to take hits from Sukuna. Durability that should massively exceed anything that he had taken in the past and still live from it nonetheless. And power that could even surprise that of Ryomen Sukuna, who knows how strong Yuji is after using the Black Flash. Yuji is overall an incredibly insane sorcerer, and I hope I was able to teach you guys some things about the power level of Yuji Itadori through this journey that you might not have known about. I hope you all liked this video. My voice hurts a lot. I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace.